Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Harrington from the University of Central Florida. My research focuses on understanding the role of context and content on presence and learning outcomes. My inspiration comes from looking at these wonderful dioramas in natural history museums. These are artifacts or knowledge artifacts that actually represent facts, concepts, and story. And in the past, these real-world visualizations of knowledge were annotated with signs and stories. Oftentimes, they were facilitated with a teacher or a parent, sometimes a docent or a curator, and if you were lucky enough, the real scientist who conducted the research was there to answer questions or to put the facts into a structure of concepts and overall in stories that carried a great deal of meaning and interpretation. So these were interpretive narratives. Last summer, I ran a study in the Hall of Botany at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History using an AR application I helped create and designed with my team and an international collaboration. But as you can see, this virtual springtime flowers actually cascade out of the traditional diorama and cover the entire gallery floor in this immersive, multimodal, interactive experience. So it transformed this space from a gray, quiet, empty hall into a living, realistic, believable, multisensory springtime woodland environment. And it was in context. You could hear the insects, you could hear the birds, you could get down on the floor and look at all the stamens and pistils. It was truly an immersive experience, even though it was on a small iPad. What made it so, I think, is the information fidelity being viewed in context with a visualization of that knowledge. So it was the content that made the difference, not the resolution on the screen, for example. And it was the attention to visualizing the knowledge of that particular place and making it fully multimodal and immersive. So information fidelity and content is used to make this expert's scientific imagination based on knowledge interact with their perception and transfer that to a naive public so they could experience what the expert could imagine. I call this perhaps the knowledge transfer in an instant, the gestalt. It's like, I get it, aha, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's interesting, look at the facts, listen to the story. And it also makes it available anytime and anywhere, because you can get an app off of the App Store, iTunes, or Google Play, and you can transform your living room or your garden into one of these environments, which I think is very powerful and also important now during COVID-19. The study consisted of 56 volunteers. Approximately 500 visitors walked into the hall over a 9-day period. This was an IRB approved study. We intentionally wanted to reduce the variance, so we divided the 56 volunteers into 2 equal groups of 28, paying attention to the adult and adult-child pairs because that's a known factor in influencing these informal learning environments. And we also tried to keep gender equal in each group to make sure that our control and our experimental condition was not unnecessarily biased by these factors. As I mentioned, the AR condition, this was the experimental condition. It used the AR app.
Hold that two hands, okay?
The no AR condition was the control condition. And the reason we used a booklet was that's the traditional state of the art used in museums. But we made sure that all of the educational content was the same. We're only interested in how the AR app, the immersive properties in the AR app design influence the learning. What did we find? We found there was no difference. I was surprised, but there was no difference measured in a pre and post test between the AR condition and the no AR condition. But it did increase learning by 40%. So an intervention has an impact, but what was also interesting is that the perceived learning was different. So while there was no actual learning on the test score changes, people overwhelmingly ranked the AR app as perceived impact, higher impact on learning. So they perceived that the AR app, they learned more when they didn't. It was a very interesting contrast between actual learning and perceived learning. We also looked at the subjective survey results on different features, design factors, and the user experience. People rated everything with modes of 7. Everything was good, which is great from a design standpoint. I was interested in what factors caused learning. So I ran a Spearman rank correlation coefficient, and I found that there were only 2 features or design factors in this app that were positively statistically correlated with actual learning. That was the plant info and the story. And this makes sense because in order for actual learning to occur, you do need access to the facts and the story. The perceived learning showed correlations to ease of use and the AR flowers, but those were not correlated to actual learning. However, what's wonderful here is that you see all these intercorrelations between the visualization, the immersive capability of the tool, the bioacoustics, the multimodal or the redundancy gain of signals that are reinforcing the entire environment, the detail and the complexity in the flowers, all the stamens, the pistils, and the colors. These are all wonderfully correlated together, and they all linked back to story. So maybe they're magnifying the impact that story has, and story places the facts into context, yielding actual learning. That's my thought. Has nothing to do with perceived learning. The method of this product development was an extensive project management, vet and approval process by the experts. I think that the application, the immersive high visual fidelity also was a product of the high information fidelity of the process. So a good process yields a good product. I also thought that we integrated the user experience design process with a learner-centered design process. So we were combining these 2 fields of user-centered design and learning sciences together in an iterative process. I refer to this as the learner user experience or the LEX design process to create these products that are both usable and yield actual learning results. We also made sure that all the educational material was identical. This is important, that all the facts were the same between the booklet and the control and the AR app. We had to make sure that the story was the same, that even the images were the same. The only factors that were different were those that could be attributed to the immersive design factors. If you want actual learning to occur, make sure these immersive applications actually have a link to or access to the stories and the facts that represent the educational content. They need access to get the information. The comments did support the claim that data visualizations were supported by bioacoustics, which is a simple redundancy signal, and those were related to story. This is when people were actually telling me the moment I understood was when this happened, when I saw the 2 different scenarios, the visualizations, and I could hear the story combined. That was important. My recommendations is that a good process yields a good product. Conclusion and future direction. I think that what I'm really interested in here are the attributes in the content. So it's not just fidelity or realism. This is an accurate visual representation or an actual experience that is based upon information fidelity. And it's presented in a way that allows the immersive technology to really be capable of magnifying or amplifying that information and that knowledge for the learner.